Hello, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Armenian War Breakdowns. In this episode, we'll be covering the Grazgarian War. In the previous episode, we covered the third battles of the war, but in this episode, we are covering the second to last few battles and assaults of the war, along with the involvement of Greenlandian intervention to help put an end to a long conflict. Without any delay, let us finish this episode. Meanwhile, a couple of hours later, at 3:25 p.m., the Grazgarians, accompanied by Blugaria soldiers, began their assault on the northern border of Bengal. The Bulgarians have received help from their ally Butopia in setting up defenses against the Grazgarians, which have attacked them since the very beginning. The Bluggarians would approach the defenses using their tanks as shields, managing to kill a few soldiers, but then the Bulgarians, who had a tank and a light artillery piece, managed to destroy both tanks. Then both Grazgarian and Bluggarian infantry would use the jungle and damaged tanks as cover while they advanced. The Bulgarian, Blutopian, and Benegalian soldiers would use their weapons to hold off the advancing forces, which worked, but it wouldn't be the end, because even though they managed to weaken their enemies' numbers a little, their enemies are now going to conduct their second part of their plan. All of a sudden, the soldiers defending the colony would hear the sounds of jets in the sky. The Blutopian anti-aircraft tanks raided their guns and would open fire at the Bluggarian planes. The Bluggarians managed to weaken the defense more by killing the soldiers and destroying the tanks. Now with the defenders weakened, more Grazgarian soldiers arrived and would attack. The few remaining soldiers of Butopia, Blugaria, and Bengal would fight, but it wouldn't be successful. A few have survived and would be captured as prisoners of war, and one of the prisoners was a Bulgarian officer, Colonel Robespierre. Now with Colonel Robespierre captured, the Blutopian and Bulgarian forces would fall back into the colony of Bali, where they would re-strengthen their defenses and prepare themselves for another attack. As for the Blutopian forces that landed in Bulgaria, they managed to link up with a group of Bulgarian soldiers under the command of Major Jean Rolock. The Blutopian forces, along with Rolock's forces, are making their way towards the city of Benay to recapture it and push Red Hontians out so they could focus on their other offensives against Tanari and Grizel's colonial allies. On Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, at 1:07 p.m., the Blutopian and Bulgarian forces on their way towards Brunei by using the only path they could travel on, which would be through Lamo Wood. But they didn't know the danger that lurks in Lamo Wood. Among the path ahead are a group of Red Hontian soldiers that are tasked with preventing the Blue forces from reaching their checkpoint, and the leader of the Red Hontian forces will be General Amak Jihari. Jihari's defenses are sandbag positions aligned with the trees, with soldiers behind them, along with 2 light artillery cannons to destroy any tanks or armored vehicles. As the Blue forces marched through the forest, things at first seemed quiet and peaceful, but then Jihari would order his men to open fire upon the advancing soldiers, which resulted with the Red Army destroying all of their tanks, but they too had some casualties before the tanks were destroyed. Next, both sides would engage in combat, but sadly Major Rolock would be killed in action by a Red Hontian grenade. But the Blutopian officer, Colonel Bram Groot, managed to lead both the remaining Bulgarian soldiers and his to victory by killing a few Red Hontians, resulting with some of them to surrender. But as for General Jihari, he took his last stand, only to be killed after taking 2 shots at the combined Blue forces. Now with the Red Hontian forces defeated at Lamo Wood, they could now approach the city of Benay, but they would also need to call reinforcements due to the casualties they took during the ambush. Their reinforcements would soon arrive, and this time they managed to have accessibility to one of the Bulgarian air bases that were hidden during the Red Hontian invasion on their eastern border. In the Red Hontian occupied city of Benay, they heard the sounds of battle within Lamo Wood, and after hearing the battle going quiet, they immediately were concerned since they didn't hear or see any of their comrades returning. So they manned their positions, waiting for the Blue infantry to come their way. But what they weren't prepared for was the sound of Bulgarian and Blutopian planes swooping in and bombing their positions at 2:30 p.m., resulting with many of the bomb sites to be accurate hits, killing a few Red Hontian soldiers. And after the planes retreated, the Bulgarian and Blutopian soldiers would attack, and the remaining Rahatians tried to fight them, but their numbers were bigger than theirs, and it resulted with the Blutopians and Bulgarians slaughtering the Rahatian soldiers and capturing the city, successfully achieving their first step of liberation. Now, as for dealing with the Tanarians, there is a problem. Even though Bulgaria did take part in the previous two battles, they have lost a few casualties, which is worrisome because the Bulgarians' military power used to be 364, but from the beginning of the war till now, they have lost casualties within their home country and a few in the colonies, resulting with the Bulgarian forces to lose over 254 soldiers, resulting that the remaining number of Bulgarian soldiers to be 110. So the decisive and wise plan that Azul came up with is to get Greenland involved on their behalf to help liberate and defend their country. Within a few minutes of having a conversation with President Leon agreed to fight on Bulgaria's behalf, but before he could do any action, he first must make contact with Tanari's leader, Suleiman Mustafa. Later that evening, President Leon had sent the letter to Tanaria through Lectopia, since they were a neutral country, and to avoid suspicion of Greenland getting involved by delivering it themselves. Within the next 3 days, the letter was still being sent, but as the letter continues its travel to Tanaria, Leon had his forces prepared and ready to attack in case Suleiman Mustafa refuses his commands. On the morning of Sunday, November 9th, 2025, at 9:30 a.m., Suleiman's advisor, Amit Arlan, would enter Suleiman's office to give him a letter that was from Greenland. Suleiman was curious about the letter and asked Amit to hand it to him, and as he did, he grabbed his letter opener and opened the letter, hoping to see if it was a trade deal or something, but it would turn out to be an ultimatum. In the letter, it says, quote, "Dear Suleiman Mustafa of Tanaria, I, President Leon of Greenland, hereby demand you remove your soldiers from the western side of Bulgaria. You will have 2 hours to remove your troops and your allies. If you choose to stay, I will send my soldiers into your country. But if you leave, then I will leave you alone as long as you and your allies don't attack Bulgaria any further. I am not standing by any longer. Signed, President Leon of Greenland." Postscript. If you do refuse, be ready for your empire's collapse. You will be first, and then your allies. End quote. After Mustafa had read this, he immediately told Amit to radio their forces in Bulgaria to pull out, and as for Red Hot to stay on defense and not engage with Bulgaria any further in order to not get Greenland involved. Within an hour, the troops that were stationed in Bulgaria had evacuated, and it would give Suleiman some time to write a response letter to Leon. After the letter was finished, he immediately ordered Amit to send it as quickly as they could. On Monday, November 10th, 2025, at 8:05 a.m. the next day, President Leon would receive Suleiman's response. In the letter, Leon was reading it. As Leon was reading it, it is confirmed that Suleiman had ordered his soldiers to retreat out of the west side of Bulgaria and has Red Hot on defensive standby, but he also mentions that he will continue his campaigns in Pacifica, and if Leon would interfere with his conflicts, he will go to war. Leon, knowing this, decides to help his fellow allies defeat the Grazgarian and Tanarian empires and their allies, hoping to preserve another era of peace and not to repeat any mistakes that he made during his first term of presidency. Leon has decided to send 4 units of soldiers to the following countries: Bueva, Grati, Red Hot, and Kejept. Greenland wants to weaken Brazil and Tanaria by invading their allied countries, weakening their strength and military power. Once their allied nations are weakened, then it will have to force Tanaria to focus on his campaign on Kejept and Brazil to retreat to their home country, where, depending on how the other missions go, may lead to Leon having to invade Brazil or offer Brazil a choice to surrender. As also the reason that Leon wants to send troops to Kejept, because he heard about their bold offensive move on the Tanarian forces during the Second Battle of Kursa Kutra. And even though it was a Egyptian victory, they have lost a bunch of casualties, and Leon knows if he could help Kejept fight for its freedom, they could have the advantage to defeat Tanaria for good.